In today's episode, Amanda and I are going to be digging into her creative practice and unpacking how she likes to create and connect to people using social media and her art. I love Amanda's ideas on being vulnerable and using your creative practice as a place to play and experiment. So Amanda's got some fantastic nuggets of wisdom for us if we're wanting to move beyond our journal and explore exhibiting our work in shows and in other places. So I know that you're going to find so much inspiration in today's conversation. Let's get into it.
Gotta get messy and show the world you growing as an artist. And you're free to be yourself. You got a dream, you need to start it. Stick together. Get messy says you're formally invited to a community where you can find people that spark the field of excitement. Too many art supplies, not enough time. No, it's tougher, so you must find a way to feel some connection. We got a lot of people with the same kind, a great mind. We here for you, a platform so we can hear your views. Time's yours, forget yours. I know you bored of them same rules.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Get Messy podcast episode. I am so excited to be talking to Amanda today, and I know that she is going to have some insights that are going to have you excited and reaching for your journal. So, Amanda, thank you so much for saying yes to joining me for the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to have this chat with you.
So for those that are listening, could you maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Amanda. You might know me from Amanda's work in the online world. I call myself an abstract artist and a writer. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and my focus is primarily on just finding creativity in the chaos of life. I find that sometimes life is busy, life is crazy, and the best we can do sometimes is just laugh about it. And that's where my inspiration comes from. I'm someone who likes to add color to just the chaos of life. Sometimes my art might look a little bit childish, but if you look deeper into it, there's like more meanings that can be found in it.
I think your art is absolutely beautiful, so inspiring. And I'm excited to dig into your whole process and your thought patterns behind what you're creating. So I'm excited to jump into it with you. So what was the question that I wanted to ask you while you were talking? There was a question that popped into my mind immediately. Oh, yes. Okay. So you said that you do writing and your art practice. So what did your creative journey look like up until this point?
Sure. I did my whole university, my academic background is in English. So I have a degree in English literature with creative writing. So it merges perfectly with my artistic practice because when I was at university, the classes that really stood out to me, the classes that were really fun and enjoyable were the art ones. So I took kind of classes in comics and graphic forms. And those were the classes that I felt like I thrived in. And also the classes that I was getting the better grades in, let's be real. So that kind of reminded me like, hey, this is actually something I'm good at. This is something that people are liking to see and things that, I'm thriving with. So that's kind of my background with that. Also, just being in English gave me that analytical background. It gave me the tools that I needed to dig deeper into things, to really read things and to be critical about things. And I think that merges perfectly with my artistic practice. And with that, I'm trying to kind of find a way to merge writing with art because they're two very different things, like words and visual aspects, combining that. It's a craft. It's something that we're just trying to figure out. Like it's something that is very new. Well, not very new. There's history. It's something that there's so much potential to explore with it. That kind of inspires me to do that.
Yes, there's something exciting about the idea of art and writing sort of being combined in one place, right? And yeah, I think it's maybe not new, as you were saying, but uncharted territory, maybe is a better way to describe it. I think there are not many people that are sort of exploring putting the two together or really digging deeper into it. I mean, a lot of us art journalists like have a spread and then put found words on, or, you know, quotes or whatever. So there is a certain element of adding words to your art. But I think taking it deeper that's an exciting journey.
Yeah, I think like there's like people think there's boundaries. Like if you're a painter, you have to paint visually, and if you're a writer, you only have to write. But I think there's so much space to cross boundaries and to try different ways to merge them together. It just makes sense that way to me, at least.
Yeah, it does. I think it does. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see where your journey is going to lead.
I am too. I'm very much too.
So you mentioned that you are a very analytical thinker, which means that you can sort of pick things apart and be a bit more critical about not just accepting ideas for surface value. How does that play out in your art?
Yeah, I think it's like a pro and con thing. I think sometimes I'm super over analytical about my stuff. I'm always overthinking things. And that's something I'm trying to unlearn, is that sometimes you have to be free with it and you got to just embrace that chaotic aspect of things. I find that the analytical side of me is very much like, okay, you have to have a big meaning to this. This art has to have huge value. It has to have a big theme to it. But in reality, it's like, I'm just showing up. I'm giving what my soul is saying, and people can read what they want from that. You know, I'm giving what I can, and that's people can take and read from it what they want. So it's kind of balancing the two of my overthinking and my wanting to embrace who I am. And yeah, like I find that as I've been out of school, I've been learning to be less critical, which is of course a pro and a con, right? I'm able to read other people's art and get inspiration from it and then put that into my own. And it's been such a great thing to be able to learn which parts I need to be more analytical and which parts I need to be more free with it. And it's been a great thing to try and experiment with it. And I find, yeah, with my art, it's just so much about experimenting, and that should be how it should be, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And do, the first thought that came to mind as you were talking was, as much as you would like to be able to control what people think or how they interpret your work, like in reality, there's no controlling that.
Oh,
So you have to just kind of accept that you need to make art for yourself, and whatever anybody else chooses to feel about it it's really their baby, right? It's got nothing to do with you.
and as like both of us, we're both putting our art online for people to see. It's part of like our vulnerability too. Like we didn't want people to have their opinions and to not, say what they want to think. We wouldn't post our stuff online, but that's why we do it. We want to
Absolutely.
share it with everyone too.
So you've touched a bit there on social media. Do you want to dig a little deeper into what social media looks like for us as artists?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's uncharted territory. It's like a new thing, Like I feel like we're in this new age of the social media artist and what that means, and we're kind of paving that way. I mean, how would you think that like artists of the past would deal with social media? How would like Van Gogh deal with like live streaming? Like it's a crazy thing to think about. Like we're kind of the newer aspect of that. But I find like it just gives me a whole world to explore that I would not have had that opportunity to deal with before. We think of kind of older artists and how they had their big introduction to the world. They didn't have social media like we did, like we do. So I find social media for me is just a way to engage with people. I'm a very quiet person. I know sometimes it might seem like I'm not, but a lot of artists, we're all quiet people. We need our alone time. We need our time to be quiet. And so for me, I'm not about to go out and do a huge TED talk and talk to a bunch of people. Like I'm not about to go on a big stage, but I can talk into my little microphone, do some voiceovers, and that's so fulfilling to me because it makes my voice feel heard. It makes me feel like people are listening, people value what I have to say. And I'm not saying that having like followers is like the most important thing, but having some followers that are able to actually engage with my work, it feels so fulfilling to have that. And it makes me like feel like people are engaging with my work. You know, when people comment, it feels like something you're making has some value to it. Not to say that comments and likes and engagement is what gives your art value, but having that opportunity to have an audience to present your work to is such an amazing thing to have. And it's something that I never thought it would have. You know, I haven't, my following's only grown in the past few years in very different ways. And to see that people are looking at my art and they're like, yeah, that's enough to have my eyeballs stick on that for just a couple of seconds. It's a crazy thing to think that, because who knew that we would be doing that in this time, right? Like, art is so crazy. That's all I can say. Social media is so crazy. Art is so crazy. But that's what makes it fun, right? Like that, it should be fun. When I talk about social media with other people, everyone's got a different view of it. Everyone's got different perspectives, different pros and cons of it. So it's also very interesting to talk with people about how art has affected their social media and how social media has affected their art.
It's helpful to view social media as a different, or that's how I've sort of viewed it, as a different part of your creative practice, if that makes any sense. Because you have to work at it, right? You have to, I know for myself, I had to learn how to take photos that I love.
We all have the early photos of over contrast, over saturated, and it's like orange, and like we all had to start somewhere. I feel you.
Exactly. Yeah. And just learning how to make reels and keeping up with the changes that happen with, you know, within the platforms. And yeah, so I think if you view your social media as a part of your creative practice and as a place where you can play and experiment and have fun, like you were saying, you know, don't take it so seriously. It was quite interesting because just before we hopped on, yeah, I was like having a little pep talk with myself and just reminding myself, don't take social media so seriously, because I tend to get in my head a lot and then start overthinking what are people thinking about what I'm saying or what I'm doing, or, you know, like I get into my head. So I was just trying to remind myself again, just have fun and do it for yourself.
I'm the exact same way. And the posts where I'm so like unserious about it, those are the posts that do great. And the posts where I'm putting in hours and hours of editing, they don't do that great. So if that's my social media advice, sure, be unserious with it. That's what works, truly. Because people want to see like your authentic self. They don't want to see all of these like multiple recordings. They want to see your true authentic self.
Yeah. And I think also that imperfect self, right? Not the very polished, everything's perfectly done. It's, I feel sometimes that that is very unrelatable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
and it's
think you've just got to just go with the
like,
messiness sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Like people want to see people who are human. People want to see people who make mistakes and are imperfect, and that's just a great way of putting it. We're imperfect because we are human. We're not robots. We're human.
So your practice that you've got now is very colorful, full of life, a lot of layering, a lot of meaning. Have you got symbolism that you've got in your work that has got special meaning to you?
Um, it's primary colors. It's brightness. It's, you know, my human figures. Like if you take one look at it, it's very inspired by like Keith Haring, those types of things, where it's taking childish work and just making it for like adults, I guess. Like of course kids can look at my art, but as an adult looking like into my art, it's very like you think it's surface level, but when you go deeper into it, there's more to it. I love using kind of just bold brush strokes because I want things to be vibrant. I kind of like just seeing beauty in like the darkness of things, like things that might seem a bit like harder, things that might seem a bit harsher, things that might seem a bit more downer. Like I want to take the sad things and make it look happy and kind of just seeing like contrasting those two things, it's so like interesting for me to deal with. But yeah, I love symbolism. For me is primary colors. It's kind of like going back to the basics, three vibrant colors that really you can use that to make anything to me. But I love the vibrancy of those three colors and they just speak to me. There's so many, you know how there's like angel numbers? For me, it's primary colors. If I'm out in the world and I see primary colors, I'm like, that is meant for me. Like, it's just something that has always just shown up. And it's like, it's just meant for me, you know? Like, it's such a, like a thing that it was meant for me. And I just accept it. And I'm like, yes, primary colors are my thing.
That's amazing. That it's actually quite special to have such a strong relationship to a certain set of colors.
Yeah, yeah. I just felt always drawn to it. And it's just something that I don't really know how to explain it, but I love primary colors and that's that.
Okay. And I think it's quite difficult to get to a point where you can draw in such a free, expressive, childlike way, because our natural inclination is to think, okay, it's art, so it has to look, all the proportions have to be right. It has to look
Yeah.
more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So did you have to go through a journey of unlearning things to get to the point where you are now?
I think I've had to unlearn like my mentality of it. My mentality of it has to be perfect. But I think what gives me that pro is I never had that big art school kind of figure drawing like education. I'd love to one day, of course, but so far I haven't. So I have kind of that limitation of this is what I can do at this time. And that gave me like the inspiration was I don't really know how to do that stuff yet. So I'm going to use the tools that I have now. And for me, it's drawing these simple, you know, childlike figures. And that's what's working for me now. Of course, like I'm going to work on it and, you know, like it might evolve later on. Who knows? In the future, I might be drawing these really realistic figurines. Who knows, right? But for now, this is what I'm given and this is what I'm going to do with it. And that's what gives me the inspiration is like, I'm going to do what I can with what I've been given and that's we'll see what comes from it and we'll be happy with it. But a lot of my unlearning was just with my mentality of things was I was so afraid to do art because I was like, I can't draw a realistic dog. I can't draw a realistic like all these figures and things. But once I discovered like abstract art and painting, I was like, wow, I can do this. This is something that frees really like it flows within me. Like I love doing this because I was like I would do art classes in like elementary school and we're drawing like the flower and stuff and I'm like this is really hard. I can't do this. I don't really like this. But now I'm at this point where I can there's just so much more you can do, right? There's so much more to try. And once I found kind of something that I'm enjoying, I went further and deeper into that.
Yeah, I think it takes courage to step over that mental block, right? I think that's where a lot of people stop is, as you were saying, like mentally you're thinking, okay, I need to be able to draw realistically if I want to create anything. And so they stop there. Whereas you had the courage to say, okay, I can't do that right now. What can I do? Or that doesn't feel right for me. What am I going to do that does feel right? And
Yeah,
then to just follow that.
yeah, and it's just it's such a courage thing and it's such a vulnerability thing to accept that you're not going to be great at everything, that there's things that you're not going to be good at, but not yet, you know? Like there's still time to learn to do other things. Sometimes you may just have to take a different way to get there, and that's completely fine.
Yeah, a different way. That is so true. Yes. I think sometimes we get stuck in thinking it has to look a certain way, right? Even your journey has to look a certain way. And when it doesn't, then you start thinking, well, obviously I'm not going to be successful, or obviously I'm not going to be like the person that I am idolizing, whatever, because my journey doesn't look the same. You've got to accept that it's going to be different for each person.
And it's something that we all kind of have to just accept and forgive ourselves for. I know a lot of times I'm always forgiving myself that I don't have the same pathway as others or I don't have like the same pathway as some of the people I look up to, but I just have to accept like I'm writing my own story, and sometimes it might be a little bit different. It might be some plot holes here and there, but you know, it's okay, and we just enjoy the journey that we're on.
Yeah. I love that. So you were talking earlier about sort of being an introvert and how that could affect, you know, how you show up on social media or for your practice. For people that are maybe not as confident in sharing their work, have you got any tips for people that are sort of just starting out and looking at everybody who is getting vulnerable and sharing their work online and thinking, I wish I could do that? Have you got any advice?
Just start. It's so hard. I know it's so hard, but just starting is like the only way. And just remind yourself, like, you don't have a million eyes on your stuff, right? Like, the people that are watching, they're giving you a chance. And what's meant for you is meant for you, you know? And it's like getting over that. It's such a difficult thing, but it's, once again, your vulnerability. Sometimes, like, I can say it's easier to share online than with like sometimes your most personal friends, because you're being so vulnerable with it, right? But because it's online, like, who cares if a stranger online doesn't like it? They're a stranger, right? So who really cares? And also the great thing with art is that it's your art. It's not your face. You don't need to show your face all the time. Really, it's your art that will speak for it.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, right? Because if there are people that I know in real life that start following me on social media, I'm like, why did you need to do that?
I'm like, no.
Well, when they come up to you and, you know, like when, let's say you're going out for coffee or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, I saw your latest reel or your post or whatever. I just want to die. Like, I cringe inside. It's just,
feel like my heart starts pounding. I'm like, let's no, you don't need to look at it. It's okay. Like, it's
exactly,
okay.
exactly. It's like, you will be doing me a favor if you don't look. Like, you know, I think a lot of them feel like they're showing you support by watching and being able to say, hey, I loved your new post or whatever. For me, it's like, no, don't look at it. You're helping me by not looking.
It's so funny that it makes us feel so self-conscious, but it's because we're feeling so vulnerable about it. But I'm trying to learn to like be proud of my art, to be proud of what I make, and to share that with my friends, because it's such a big part of me. You know, like, I care about it so much. And I think that's why we feel so self-conscious about it, is because we care about it. Like, it's something that we really love and we really have a passion for. So being able to like break down those walls and show it to our friends, of course, it's something I'm still trying to learn. Like, it's something that's so difficult, but it's like, if I love it, my friends should love it too.
It's true. But, you know, in that moment, I feel like I'm naked in front of them. And I think it is what you're saying. It's that vulnerability. All of a sudden, I feel like they can see right through me. And it's just, I get so uncomfortable.
Right. I know. I feel the exact same way. It's good to know that, like, even though we've been doing this for so many years, like, we still feel that way.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. But it's definitely that vulnerability and the intimacy of them. I think it's the combination of the intimacy of your relationship and the vulnerability of your sharing. So strangers, it's a step away from, they don't have that same intimacy level. And so it feels like the vulnerability is okay. But the cocktail of the two together it's intense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when you figure it out, let me know. If the listeners figure it out, let us know, because I would love to know how to get over that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you say, you want them to, you know, you want to feel proud to have put yourself out there like that. And it's not that you're not proud of it, but it's just that vulnerability that is just too, it's intense. So what does your practice look like at the moment? Have you got a daily practice?
Yeah, I've just finished up some big paintings because I did a little art show, and so I'm like over it with big paintings. I want smaller scale paints, smaller scale stuff. So I work with my mini journals right now, and I'm kind of just focusing on mini journals and keeping things on a smaller scale. And I'm always kind of like going back and forth between big and small. And I think that helps because sometimes we get bored and we want to break up the routine. So I usually kind of do that throughout the day. I'm usually working on one of those projects. Sometimes I'll experiment with some digital art because why not? I have this iPad, I might as well use it, right? Like I pay big money for that. And then a lot of my artistic practice is like the morning, do some art, leave it, go for the walk, take the dogs out, do my like human things as a human, my work things. And then at nighttime, I'll come back and I'll do more, right? Because I think we need that break in the middle of the day. And then I usually end my day with my daily art journal, which is kind of something that people may know. And it's just every day I make something in my daily art journal. I have a specific journal just for that. Some days I'm doing big, elaborate paintings because I feel like it. Other days I'm putting some words, smiley face, and I call it a day, you know? Like it fluctuates, but that's what kind of makes it fun is that the goal of that journal is to just show up and make something. And it's been really nice to share that journal with people because I feel like people haven't really seen like that aspect of journaling where they think every page has to be this perfect thing. But this journal is all about just having something there. It's kind of a combination of an art journal and a sketchbook. And because I always tried to do sketchbooks, but sketchbooks did not want anything to do with me. Like I have so many half-filled sketchbooks because I just could never keep going with them. And when I found this practice of the daily art journal, it really just opened up this kind of new way of possibility. Like sometimes I'll make a painting and I'll come back to it after a few days and I'll look at it and I'm like, hey, you know, that actually was a great idea for a bigger piece. So now it gave me like the ideas to keep on going and making more things. So I've been doing my daily art journal maybe for about 2 years now, and it's something that's definitely changed the way that I do art. And I'm super thankful that I did it and that I came across that idea and it came to me. And it's something I love it. And I'm glad that I get to share with others because I know people have told me they've started doing it and it's been like great for them. And I'm like, that sounds fantastic. And I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's one of the nice things about sharing your art and your process and your thoughts around creativity and your practice, right? Is that you have the ability to influence other people's lives in such a positive way.
Yeah, exactly. It's a thing that once again, like I never thought I would be inspiring people to do art when I'm barely scratching the surface with art myself, yet people are inspired by me and I'm like, wow, that actually feels so amazing to see that.
I'm interested to know, you were mentioning that you had been working on big pieces for a show and now you've done with that. And so you're back into a smaller journal. Do you take a break between, like if you now finish this big project, do you feel like you need some downtime before you start creating again, even if it is in a smaller sketchbook? Or do you just have like a constant practice?
I feel like I always have a constant. Like I've always got 3 to 4 journals going at a time, one bigger painting, always waiting. And I think it's because I'm just always itching to do something. And I think like it's because I love it so much. I love doing art. I do take bigger breaks between shows just because they're draining. Like I'm an introvert. I don't want to be out, talking all the time. They drain me. So I like to have some gaps in between there. And also I'm very choosy about the opportunities that I choose because I want to pick spots that are really good for me that I can thrive in. So I take breaks in between there and I'm very like I schedule those a lot more because
Mm.
for me as a person, just going out and doing things like that is harder. But when it comes to my artistic practice, I'm just chaos with it. I've got 5 things going at a time, a movie going on, I've got music blaring, and I'm just like doing everything everywhere all at once, and I love it. Like it's what keeps me like going because sometimes I'll be doing one piece and I'll be doing a technique there and I'm like, hey, you know what, that'll actually work really well with this art journal page that I'm doing. So then I'll move it over there and they kind of bounce off each other and the ideas will just flow. So doing one piece at a time is not the way that I do it. It's like it doesn't work that way. So having multiple pieces, it's kind of they like flow together. And it's kind of nice to see sometimes when I look through my work, like I'll see have pieces that kind of have elements of each other in it, and like it flows with each other, and that's a cool thing to see.
It sounds like creative chaos. You thrive in creative chaos.
True, very true.
I think what it helps with is it stops overthinking, right? Because the minute you sort of focusing on one thing, it's very easy to become obsessed with trying to get small details right or overthinking choices and processes. Whereas if you're bouncing between different projects, different substrates, different sizes, you've got that freedom to be able to respond to what's happening in front of you and to not have that overthinking happening.
Exactly. And I think sometimes when we get stuck too, it's just easier to just go and do something else. And then what you need will come to you at the time it needs to come to you. And it's as simple as that.
Trust, right?
Yeah,
You got to
exactly.
trust.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you don't trust that it's going to come to you, you can spiral quite easily. But if you trust that giving it the space and time it needs, everything works out.
Yes, absolutely. It's always harder though. Like we always think it's super easy to trust the process, but just got to do it, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes it's easier than others, though, right? Yeah. Okay. So I love that you are specifically choosing which shows you're going to be doing and sort of planning it out so that you're giving yourself gaps in between to be able to work on other projects and just have some creative freedom. For people that are wanting to take that step from working in their journal to actually being part of a show, what advice do you have for them?
Just think bigger. I have this poster in my room that I just wrote down big. And it just reminds me to think bigger, Like you never know where you might end up. You never know what position you might be put in. If someone gives you the opportunity, just say yes if you can. Never say no. It might be scary. You might feel terrified, but just give it a try. One of the great things as an artist is that if you fail, it's okay. Like I always tell myself, like if this art show goes terribly, I don't have to come back. I don't have to do it again. It's over. It's done with. I gave it a try, and that's great. So if you give it a try, you tried, and that's an amazing thing. Like things don't work out, that's fine. Just move on to the next thing, and you'll be okay. Like I know it seems so terrifying, and like I'm terrified every time I do an art show. I'm terrified that it's gonna fail. I'm terrified that I'm gonna not people aren't gonna like it. And because I think I have art that people don't really see as like super high value, but to me it does, of course. So that's all that matters. If the stuff you make, you believe in it, put it out there, and the people who are meant to see it, the people who are meant to buy it, it'll show up in the right places. Simple as that. A lot of it is trusting in the unknown, which is like so hard to do. But if you just put yourself out there and you give it a try, you never know what might happen. And if it fails, it fails. You never have to do that show again. Simple as that. It's what I tell myself. I give myself pep talks all the time about it. Like art shows are such a risk because you're putting so much into it and you never know what might happen, but sometimes you get like great rewards out of it. Like I've had such great experiences of people walking by and they take a look at my art and it puts a smile on their face, and it's like, hey, wow, all of that worrying has paid off because I made someone smile looking at my art.
I think that's what keeps people from not exhibiting or not participating in shows is that scary idea of putting yourself out there and what if people don't like it, or what if it's not successful. So I think it's easier then to just not do it at all.
Exactly. And I think also like the practical aspects of it too, like the financial money that you put into that. Sometimes you have to do volunteer for it. You have to physically be there. Sometimes you have to, talk to the people who are looking at your work. That can be a really scary thing to do. And sometimes if you can look into like just smaller art shows or even doing an art show with a group of friends or something, just starting small and then getting bigger is like great thing. I've had the best opportunity to have like these smaller galleries have like these tiny pop-up shows where it's very low risk, like it's only 1 or 2 days, and I was able to just do smaller things, and it kind of gave me more confidence to go and do kind of bigger shows.
I think that's great advice. Baby steps, right? Just
Of course, yes.
you don't need to go from your journal to this massive canvas in a
Yeah,
solo show.
yeah,
Yeah, look for smaller opportunities to be able to expand your comfort zone.
yeah.
Mm.
Like one of my very first shows was a post-it show, and we just made art on little post-it notes, and that was like so fulfilling to do because I was able to make this art on these tiny post-it notes, and my friends got to see it, and I got to bring them to an art show, and that felt so fulfilling to do.
Oh, I love that idea. That is cute. That must have been such a fun exhibition to have
Yeah, it's so
been a
fun.
part of. And I love that you say that even now you still feel scared, right? It's not like you are participating in these shows and thinking, oh, it's another show, but you still feel that anxiety around it and you're still giving yourself pep talks. So it's really encouraging for people that are thinking about doing it. Like, even though you've had a few shows, you still feel that anxiety around it.
Oh yeah, I'm terrified all the time. But I feel the fear and I do it anyways, like I'm still gonna be scared, but I'm still gonna do it. And yeah, like I'm always trying to push myself that like we can't be scared forever, like we take those tiny steps and we keep working, and it's not gonna be linear, like you're not gonna just keep going up, up, up. There's times where things are gonna get worse, things are where it's gonna fluctuate, but as long as I'm trying, as long as I'm doing what I can do, we'll see what happens.
I'm interested to explore that a little bit more, where you were saying, it can't always be going well. Sometimes you're going to make art that you don't love. Do you find that you go through phases where it feels like you're in a funk, like your art doesn't belong to you?
I feel like majority of the time the art that I make, I'm so frustrated with, but that's what means it's because I'm growing. It's because I'm discovering. It's because I have that courage to play. And I think when you play, you're going to make stuff that you hate. And that's completely okay. I think if you like everything you make, you're playing it too safe, right? Like you got to be able to experiment and explore and try new things, because that's how you're going to grow. If you're playing it safe all the time, you're just going to be going in circles. You're not going to be making making breakthroughs. So yeah, I think a lot of the art that I make, I'm like, this is not it. This is garbage. But, when I look back at the stuff I make, like a couple years ago, I'm like, wow, like, look how much I've improved. Look how much I've changed it. Like, I used to be super into like bullet journaling and like very like cutesy type of like very minimalistic stuff. But if you look at the art I make now, I'm making like explosions of color. But in order for me to get to that spot, I've had to make a lot of bad stuff in order to get there.
I love that you used the word frustrated, because that is how I feel the majority of the time.
Yep.
Just so frustrated with what I'm making. And every now and then I think, can't I just make something that I go, oh, wow, this is the best thing ever. It's just, it's like you're chasing an elusive unicorn or something. I don't know.
Yes, and it's always the stuff that we're the most frustrated with, and the stuff that we think is ugly is what people like. And the stuff that we think is really great, people aren't really that into. But it's like, hey, you know what? I like it, but okay, sure. But it's like, why can't you like the stuff that I am like super proud of? But okay, sure, let's go back to that other stuff then.
It's amazing, right? Sometimes, especially going back to social media, I don't know how many times I've heard people say it, and I have experienced it, when you're so excited to post something because, like you say, you think, I finally made something that I love and everybody's going to love it too. And it's almost like crickets.
Yep.
And you think, what happened? Did nobody see the post? Did I post it at the wrong time? What's going on here? And then other times you think, oh, it's not the best, but maybe I'll just share it and, whatever. And like you're saying, the ones that you don't put too much effort into, right? Where you're just like, whatever's happening. And everybody responds to it. It's weird how that works.
It's such a wild thing to try to deal with. And that's why I think I try to take it not to heart too much, that, it's let the people like what they let I like what I like, and we'll go from there. Like my dog loves my work, and that's all that really matters.
Oh, I love that. I have to write that down. My dog loves my work, and that's all that matters. Oh. Okay, so have you got favorite supplies? We know that you've got primary colors, love the primary colors. Have you got supplies that really resonate with you at the moment?
I I love a good stencil brush because it adds like that texture. I love texture. I love some kind of like thicker acrylic paint to add texture to things because I just love having like that kind of 3D aspect to things. I love a good stencil brush, and I love using it until there's like nothing left. Like I'm someone who, if I don't want to use a new brush, I want a brush that's old and crusty. It's been with me like for years because it feels like I'm gonna make some like amazing thing out of it. Um, it's so like superstitious of me, but I love a stencil brush that's like crusty. Is that a good thing to say? Like is that but like let me give a more better answer. Like not better, but a more like practical answer. I love a good black Posca pen. One that
Oh,
like helps to add details because you think like, oh, it's a black pen, you can use any black pen. But a black paint pen works wonders in your artistic craft. Like when you want to do an eye, a black paint pen like does such a good job. Like I know like I'm here like ranting about how a black pen has changed my life, but it's true. Like once I got a black Posca with like a very fine tip, changed the game for me. And it's like I know how we always say like, oh, you don't need really special like expensive supplies. Like you can do it with anything, which is of course so true. You can make anything out of everything, but having like a pen that's like works for what you want to do, it's a game changer. It's like my comfort pen, if that makes sense. Like if I lose that pen, I'm like scrambling. I'm like I can't make any more art today. I have to find this pen, otherwise I don't know what I'm gonna do. But yes, black paint pen and a crusty stencil brush is all you need to make amazing art. That's my advice. Quote me on that.
I can totally relate to the Posca. It's like, I don't know how many times I've been journaling and all I can think is, I need a black Posca pen. Like I will be trying with other pens,
Mhm.
and I do love a Signo Uniball Broad pen.
Mhm.
Such a good pen, but sometimes it just doesn't do the job, and you need that black Posca pen. 100% agree with you.
Sometimes I'll be like just drawing with some kids or something, and we'll be using crayons, and I'm like, you know what would elevate this? A black Posca pen. That would make this so much better.
So do you work with kids often?
No, that was just for fun type of thing. I'm just a kid
I
myself,
know.
like. But I think
It's,
it's
but
a lot more relatable too as well. Like they see my art and they're drawn to it. So I think yeah, kids they do like my art, and of course I love to play as well with like childish things, so I might as well, right?
yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit to bringing new energy just by playing with kids. Like if you've got cousins or if you've got friends
Yeah.
with kids, just just spending time with them and messing around with supplies. There is something magical in seeing how free they are in how they use supplies
Mhm.
and just how they create in general.
It's that childlike wonder, right? Like they
Mm.
haven't been told that you have to use a specific stencil brush that's crusty to make beautiful art. They just go, hey, I can make art with anything. They're making art with mud. And it's like, yeah, it's that childlike wonder of like you haven't been kind of crushed by the world yet, by like all the impact of everything around you. You've been like been given that freedom to play, and that's something that we all need to have, that childlike wonder to just play.
Yeah. The other thing is, I don't know how much experience you have with creating with kids, but I have found that we know what the cost of something is. So you'll have those supplies that you know cost
Oh yeah.
dollars,
I feel
serious dollars. And
yeah.
so you're using it so preciously and you're so tight with it. And then you give it to kids and they like squeeze the whole
Oh,
tube out.
yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I've definitely had that experience. And I'm like in shock. I'm like, oh, but trying to be nice about it because you don't want them to feel bad. But you're like, oh, that's like $80 right there. But sure, let's splash around with that. Sure.
Exactly. But I think it has taught me that it is just supplies, right? Like,
Yeah,
don't be
exactly.
so precious about
Yeah.
it. And yeah, but it's something that you have to sort of learn. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we'll just like splash out a whole bottle of $80 ink or whatever it is, but it's just so exciting. I find it exciting to watch them have absolutely no understanding of cost and just
Yeah.
enjoying the supplies
Yeah.
and what it can do, right? It's fantastic.
I've been trying to remind myself that lately too. Like, do you know about like that piece? It's called like the comedian, but you probably know it because it's like the banana that was taped to the wall, and that's sold
Yes.
for like $6 million. And it's like I'm here worrying because I'm like my painting's $100. No one's gonna buy it. I'm like, girl, the banana. Think about the banana. Like cost, like money is like a huge thing that you don't need to worry about because just play with it and see where
Mhm.
it will take you. You never know, right? Like what's meant for you is meant for you. And yeah, like it's so funny that we worry about like, oh, I don't want to use too much paint because it costs so much. But it's like,
Mhm.
who really cares, Like just play with it. And it's so many things that we have to unlearn, right? To just
Absolutely.
spiral.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I found too, right, is oftentimes you get those things and you hoard them. So you're very precious about how you use them. Don't use them too often. Don't use too much, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And what ends up happening is the ink dries or it separates or whatever because you didn't use it.
Yeah,
So,
it's just wasted. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot to be said about having something and really enjoying it. Like knowing, okay, this ink costs $80. I'm going to enjoy every minute of using it,
Hmm.
as opposed to I'm going to be so precious about using it because it costs so much.
Yeah, and I
Right?
think
Mindset.
yeah, and I think it also helps you to create more because you're thinking like, yes, this
Mhm.
is a more expensive paint, but that's because it'll make me make something that's more, has more value. Like it's kind of like tricking your mind. Like I'm sometimes like that. I'm like, I'll buy this new paint and it'll make me create something new. It'll make me change how I see things, change how I make things because of a paint. And it's like so much of art and ourselves is like tricking ourselves into doing things.
Mhm.
Like it's like buying a little treat because you made that important phone call, you did that important email. Like we treat ourselves, and sometimes you got to take that expensive paint and that expensive ink and make something with it because you deserve it. Like we always think like we have to like cheap stuff because we're risking it, but you know what? You deserve to use expensive stuff. You
Mhm.
deserve to use that those things because it adds value to you and to your art.
And I have also found, I know you're going to agree with me, I'm sure, but when you're using more expensive supplies, the quality is so different that the art that's produced is different just because of the quality of the supplies, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
same technique level, same artist, same everything, but just by using a better supply, you get better results.
I feel like that's like empowering because it makes you feel like sometimes you
Mhm.
might feel like you're not getting the result you want because you're using a cheaper product. But when you use the more expensive product, it works. You get the vision that you're thinking of, and it makes you feel like I actually know what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly what I was thinking, right? Um, you realize that it's not you, it's your supplies.
Exactly, exactly. And then if you feel like you're not making what you want, just blame it on your supplies. Like it's not me. It's the supplies.
Yep.
Simple as that. Of course, of course.
Yeah, but I think it's important, as you were saying, like, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take your art too seriously.
Mhm.
Play, have fun, and just allow yourself to go wherever your art is taking you.
Exactly. And like, if you show up to your art with that mindset, your art will also give that back to you. Like, if you show up and you're like mad at your art and you're like, I don't like you, you're not being good to me, your art's gonna give that back to you, you know? Like, it's so, you give what you receive, what you give and stuff. Like, the things that you put into it will come back to you. And that's why you got to be nice to it. Be kind to yourself, be kind to your art, and beautiful things will happen. And of course, like, if
Yeah.
you want to make like angry frustration art, do it. I do it all the time. Like, I put my feelings into my art, and that's, you can very like see that if you look through my journals and you're flipping through, you're like, okay, she's happy this day she had a really bad day, this day like she was really frustrated, but this day she was filled with joy. And it's like, that's such the like the beauty of art though. Like, when you see someone's art, you can see how they're feeling, how they are. Of course, sometimes it's not that deep, but as we are as humans, like, we read things, we feel things, we get emotions from it, and it's such a beauty to be able to see emotions through art in that visual format.
But I think there is a difference too, though, between expressing how you're feeling in your art and having a certain kind of feeling about your art.
Yes, of course. Yeah. That's true. Very true. Because yeah, like some art that I make, I'm feeling all these feelings. And then I'll look back at it and I'm like, that's interesting. But it's also like the joy of it, right? The exploration of it, like seeing what you make depending on who you are. And that's what gives that story, right? That's what gives the story of our art and who we are. And that's just part of the fun of it. Like, we imagine like if you were sad and you only made blue things, that would suck, right? Like, that would be so like, all I make is blue things all the time. That would be so horrible. But instead, we get to make so many different things, and that's what makes it so cool.
Yeah, there's different facets of your personality and of your life being
Mm-hmm.
reflected in how you're creating and what you're creating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
When you're approaching your art, are you thinking about ideas and feelings before you create, or do you allow it to sort of naturally come out as you're creating?
I think I'm a mix of both. I think like sometimes I have an idea really set, and I'm like, let's dive right into it. And sometimes I'm like, I got no clue what I'm making today, but I'm gonna figure out to make something. And sometimes I'm feeling absolutely horrible, and I'm like, we gotta put this on a page and get it out of my head. Like, a lot of times, being an artist, you're very like, we feel a lot and we're very sensitive, and I find that I gotta get it out of my head and just get it onto like a page, get it on a canvas, get it out, and then so it's not in my head anymore. But yeah, a huge mix. I think a lot of it is inspiration from seeing others, and we'll start something and we'll go for it. A lot of times it's getting it just out of my head and putting it out into the world. Um, I also believe a lot in like collective consciousness and stuff. How like if we think of something, it's because it's meant to be out there at this time, and if I'm not going to do it, someone else will. The collective consciousness is something that everyone's talking about now. It's so big, and everyone's like has something, like everyone's thinking about it. And I think it's such a great thing though, because it's the time to do it, because we have social media, we have that community of people. So it's like, it's not just one person anymore. We're a huge collective, and we have that opportunity to create together.
Yes, the world's changed, right? And society's changed. And so it's a great way to be able to use that change for good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for chatting to me today, Amanda. It has been absolutely fantastic chatting to you about your creative practice and your thoughts around being creative and living a creative life. It's been such an inspiration.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad we had this time to just yap and just talk. I love talking about art, so this has been a really fun time for me. Thank you.